When Claire Henderson first moved to Chicago, she didn't expect her life to change as much as it did. She was 28 years old, fresh out of graduate school, and finally stepping into a job that made her feel like all the sleepless nights and long years of study had been worth it. Her new apartment, though modest, was hers alone, and she relished every moment of independence that came with it. But independence also came with the quiet echoes of loneliness, something she hadn't fully anticipated. Claire had never been someone who craved constant company, but moving to a big city where she knew almost no one was a challenge. Her first week in Chicago, she spent most evenings curled up on the old leather couch she had inherited from her cousin. It was scratched at the corners, uneven at the legs, and smelled faintly of coffee, but it became her safe haven, a place where she could retreat after long days at the office. She would sit with a book, sip tea, and watch the skyline twinkle through her window. But that couch, old and worn as it was, became the stage for something much greater than Claire could have ever imagined. It all started one chilly October evening. Claire had just come home from work, exhausted after back-to-back meetings. She changed into her comfiest sweater, reheated leftover pasta, and collapsed onto the couch. She was halfway through her meal when she heard a knock on her door. Surprised, she set her plate down and went to answer it. Standing outside was a tall man with kind brown eyes and an apologetic smile. He held a small cardboard box in his hands. "Hi," he said, his voice warm. "I'm Daniel. I just moved in next door, and I think this package was delivered to your apartment by mistake." Claire blinked, then smiled politely. "Oh. Hi, Daniel. I'm Claire." "Yeah, this happens all the time." The delivery guys seemed to get confused. "Thanks for bringing it over." He handed her the box, and for a moment, their fingers brushed. It was nothing, just a passing touch, but Claire felt a flicker of awareness she hadn't felt in a long time. "Sorry to bother you," Daniel added, backing away slightly. "Not a bother at all," Claire said quickly. "Actually, welcome to the building. It can be a little overwhelming at first, but you'll get used to it." Daniel smiled again, that easy, genuine smile that made him look even younger than his 30 years. "Thanks. That's good to know." He hesitated, then added, "If you ever need anything, a light bulb changed, furniture moved, that sort of thing, don't hesitate to knock. I'm pretty handy." Claire thanked him and shut the door, but for the rest of the evening, she couldn't quite get his smile out of her head. She curled up on her couch again, this time with her pasta forgotten, wondering why such a simple encounter had left her feeling lighter. The following week, Claire and Daniel ran into each other often, in the hallway, in the lobby, even at the nearby grocery store. Each time, their conversations grew a little longer, a little easier. Daniel was a software developer who had just transferred from Denver, and he was as new to Chicago as Claire had once been. They bonded over their shared struggles of adjusting to the bustling city life, trading tips about the best coffee shops, quiet libraries, and weekend farmers markets. One Friday night, after a particularly rough day at work, Claire heard another knock on her door. She opened it to find Daniel holding a bag of takeout. "Look, I might be overstepping," he said sheepishly, "but I figured you could use some company. And maybe some really good Thai food." Claire laughed, her stress softening instantly. "You guessed right. Come on in." And so, for the first time, Daniel sat on her old couch. They ate noodles and spring rolls, watched a corny sitcom on TV, and talked until the clock struck midnight. That couch, which had always been Claire's solitary retreat, now held laughter and conversation, a new energy that made her apartment feel brighter. As the weeks passed, Daniel became a fixture in Claire's life. Sometimes he would bring over pizza, other times Claire would invite him in for tea after a long day. They would sit on the couch and share stories from their childhoods, his about summers spent hiking in Colorado, hers about road trips with her family in Michigan. Slowly, Claire began to realize that the loneliness she had once felt was fading, replaced by something tender and unexpected. But life, as it often does, threw challenges their way. One evening, Daniel appeared at her door looking troubled. He sank onto the couch without a word, and Claire joined him, concern etched on her face. "My job," he finally admitted. "They're talking about moving the team back to Denver. I don't know if I'll have to go with them or if I can stay here." I just got settled, and he trailed off, his eyes meeting hers, vulnerable and uncertain. Claire's heart sank. The thought of him leaving was one she hadn't prepared for. "What do you want?" she asked softly. Daniel took a deep breath. "Honestly, I want to stay. Because of this place. Because of you." The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Claire's heart raced, but she reached for his hand and held it firmly. "We'll figure it out," she whispered. The following weeks were a whirlwind of uncertainty, but they leaned on each other more than ever. The couch became their sanctuary, the place where they hashed out fears, laughed through frustrations, and even sat in quiet companionship when words weren't enough. It wasn't grand or glamorous, but it was real. Eventually, Daniel made his choice. He turned down the transfer and found a new opportunity in Chicago. It wasn't easy, but he said it was worth it for the life he was building with Claire. Months turned into a year, and that couch witnessed everything. Their first real argument, their reconciliation, late-night talks about dreams and hopes, and even the quiet moment when Daniel nervously asked if Claire would consider moving in with him someday. Claire often looked at that old, worn couch with a kind of what had once been a symbol of solitude had become the beginning of something extraordinary. It wasn't just about sharing space. It was about finding someone who turned an ordinary apartment into a home, someone who made even the hardest days feel bearable. And so, as they sat together one evening, the Chicago skyline glowing outside, Claire leaned against Daniel and whispered, "The couch was just the beginning." Daniel smiled, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "And you became everything I never knew I needed." The old couch may not have been beautiful, but for Claire and Daniel, it was where everything began. A reminder that love doesn't always arrive with grand gestures, but sometimes in the quiet knock of a neighbor, a shared meal, and the comfort of simply being together.